raunchy reality show on Netflix that I just can't get enough of. There's a cliffhanger on the drama, and I want to see how this fight blows up in the next episode. Or I want to see, oh, this person cheated on this person. How are they going to respond when they find out? Like, there's a part of me internally that gets excited and drawn into that, and I hate it.
Welcome to the Hope in Real Life podcast with Jason Gore. Our team is passionate and committed to bringing you more hope in the everyday, real areas of your life. If this conversation and content is valuable for you, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and even share. You never know how valuable it could be to share a little bit of hope with someone else. Let's get the conversation started. What's going on, Hope in Real Life family? We are here this episode with some great friends of mine, Ayren and Morgan Nelson, and we're going to talk about, I don't know, maybe a lot of things, and this could end up being one episode, could end up being two, could end up being three, things like spiritual goals, emotional health. We're going to talk a little bit about marriage, but we'll see where the conversation leads. Yeah. But why don't the two of you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Ladies first, go for it.
Oh, man. I'm Morgan Nelson. That's it.
There is more to you than that.
I have the joy of being married to Ayren Nelson. We've been married for 4 years now. I guess pre-getting married, I'm from North Carolina born and raised. I feel like that's bragging rights. You don't run into a lot of North Carolinians. Grew up in Wilmington.
Wolfpack or Tar Heels?
Wolfpack,
yes,
all the way.
Go Pack.
That was the next step. That's what brought me to this area. I went to NC State, studied civil engineering, loved the area, graduated, stayed, got a job, fell in love, and now we're having a baby.
Okay.
The rest is history. That's it.
Yeah.
Ayren?
I am Ayren Nelson. I'm also joyfully married to Morgan Nelson. Made a note to include that after she included it first time around. I in full-time ministry, been doing ministry since I was in high school. Felt a call from God around the age of 14 to start kind of pursuing and going down that route. And so that's been it. I am not nearly as educated as my wife is, but I try. Together we host the True Discipleship podcast. That's something that we do together that we thoroughly enjoy. It's really all about helping see people just grow in their walks with Jesus. And what does that actually look like in real time, not just kind of hypothetically. And so, we talk about that on a somewhat weekly basis, depending on when you catch us. And I'm sure that'll all stay the same once the baby's here, but you know.
And we'll make sure we drop a link to that down in the show notes and everything so folks can check out that.
I wouldn't check it out if I were.
And also an LA Dodgers fan. Something else the two of you do together, apparently, from what I hear, is watch baseball.
Very recent development. Yeah.
Yes. I have always loved baseball. I grew up playing softball. Probably since I was like 8, played in like a rec league and then played in middle and high school. And that skill or like knowing the rules translates to baseball really well, so I don't have to ask questions constantly. Like when we watch football, I'm like, what just happened? What's the difference between a cornerback and a quarterback? They sound the same. So I know the positions, I know the rules in baseball, so I've always loved watching baseball, and Ayren hated it up until
literally a few weeks ago. We had friends who bought, here's what happened. We had friends that gave us tickets to a Dodger game, and they were way nicer than any tickets we could have afforded on our own. And I'm like, oh, this is how the other half lives. And so ever since then, I'm like, I like baseball now. We had a good time, enjoyed watching the game. Only problem is us living in North Carolina and being fans of the Dodgers. We fall asleep to their games every night because they start at 10 p.m. here on the East Coast. But I
fall asleep to that national anthem.
It's great.
And so you're not watching much of the Olympic wrestling going on right now? Is that what you're telling me? Because you're watching baseball. That's the only reason.
We're watching baseball, and then I inhaled Olympic gymnastics, and now it's done, and I'm sad. I'm actually in mourning because for me, like the Olympics go on until the 11th for everybody else, but they ended yesterday for me.
All right. Well, good for our listeners to hear a bit about the two of you. Let's jump in. We're talking about what does it mean to grow spiritually? I mean, the podcast, Hope in Real Life, how do we find a bit more hope in the everyday moments of our life? And in this case, we would say through spiritual growth, but we decided to fine-tune that and kind of narrow that down. Like, hey, a good thing to have is a spiritual goal. And so let's just start out just hearing from the two of you. Like, what's the importance behind having a spiritual goal in our lives?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and kick it off. You know, I think, I actually think a lot of this conversation stems from us having a kid on the way. I've been like enamored with the idea of like, how does a human become a human? Like you just think about the things that you do every day that you don't even think about in life from your brain being able to identify colors to knowing how to read, knowing how to walk and all these different things. And I think we both kind of feel this weight and this pressure of like, oh, that's on us. Like we've got to raise up a person to do that. And so, with me, I did middle school ministry. Morgan did as well. She was a small group leader with middle school girls for a really long time. And I remember we sat down a few weeks ago and we were like, okay, look, we know a lot of middle school kids. And we definitely have our favorites, like if we're honest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're the cool kids. They're those kids who were like, man, maybe they're not like super socially adjusted yet, right? And that's like not a knock on them or anything. Right. But literally, we had the conversation of like, when our kid's a middle schooler.
You're not talking about my kids.
No. We're fine. Of course not. No.
We don't get to hang out with your kids enough.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
And that makes me sad.
Okay.
But we had the idea of like, man, like how does this newborn who's going to be here in a few weeks, what are they going to be like when they're 13, 14 years old? And, it's all a dream and you can't, there's nothing that we can do to completely manipulate that, right? Obviously, there's certain gifts and talents and abilities and just natural inclinations that they're going to have, kind of nature versus nurture stuff. But, man, I think the more that we think about that is like, you can put, we were just talking about the Olympics. You look at these kids who are in the Olympics right now, and you think about what the trajectory of their lives have looked like to get them there. Mm-hmm. And that's a special breed of parent that is willing to put in the work and the time and the effort to get their child to the Olympics. Mm-hmm. No one gets there by accident. Right. And I think in having that conversation, we also recognize that when it comes to who a person is going to be just on a spiritual level, when you talk about their character, they talk about their integrity, when you talk about what are the issues in the world that they care about and that deeply move them and deeply concern them, no one stumbles into being that type of person as well. Right. I think you can, but usually it's not the type of person that you want to be, right? That's the reason why therapy is a booming industry right now, because people are like, man, I didn't care about this enough. Or maybe my parents or whoever my caregivers were didn't care about this early enough in my life. And now I'm trying to undo all of that, go back to that point so I can almost rebuild those things over again, right? Yeah. And so I think when we talk about the idea of setting spiritual goals, it's, man, what can we do to kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit to say, who is the type of person that I want to be on a character level, on an integrity level, 5, 10, 15 years from now? And then what do I have to start doing now in order to become that sort of person?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is the importance of it for you is because you're going to be raising kids or at least a child. Mm-hmm. And so who you are is going to play some role in who they become.
Yeah, exactly.
And you asked that question, you said, what are they going to be like when they're 12, 13 years old? And as a dad of 3, I'm going to tell you exactly what they're going to be like. They're going to be a mixture of the absolute best things about you and the absolute worst things about you. And you're going to know, man, what in the world have I done? So, I think that's beautiful, though, to say, like, how can I invest in myself now spiritually so that I can be the man or the woman that it is that I need to be for my kids?
Yeah.
What is a spiritual goal?
I'd say it's like any other goal. When you're looking at either your physical health, your mental health, in your career, in your marriage, when you say there's somewhere I want to be and I'm not there yet, and you name it and say this is where I want to be, and engineering is my background, so like goals have to be smart and measurable, and we have to have a timeline, and so in X number of months, this is where I want to be spiritually, whether that's I've been consistent in my prayer life, or I'm in the Bible X number of days per week. It's like any other goal. You just are looking at prayer and reading your Bible, and what does my relationship with God look like right now, and where do I want it to be, and what do I have to do to get to that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I agree. I think the only difference is that when it comes to like a physical goal that you may have on yourself is that you may say like, my goal is to climb Everest. Like, when you did it.
Right. Yes.
Right? Yeah. When you say, I want to become a person of integrity.
It's a little more fuzzy.
Yeah. I want to love my wife better. Yeah. Well, do you reach a day where you're like, no, that's enough. I'm good.
Right.
I've loved her to the max. I don't need to invest any more in her. Like, you know what I mean? So it's in a way, I do think it requires the same level of intentionality that you just talked about, but at the same time, it's a little bit fuzzy in the sense of you never truly arrive. That's actually something that you talk about a lot.
Yeah.
You never truly arrive to that place, but it's being able to take an inventory and recognize where are the deficiencies in my life, like where are the areas of my life where I can lean into this more, where I desire more of this, as opposed to just being like, nah, this is the way I am, this is the way I'm always going to be. There's actually, I don't know if you want to kind of get on that soapbox for a little bit, but you you have a big issue with that phrase, just in general, like this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way things have always been.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate it. I think it's just a trap of why, like, we can think out of the side of the box and we can do things, or really just unearthing the why behind why we do the things that we do. Yeah. I don't want to say, like, we're just going to keep doing something because we've always done it this way and not know a reason behind it. Yeah. We actually talked about this one time of, like, the importance of tradition. Like, I value tradition, and that, like, in our faith, we have things that we do because we've always done it that way. But there are whys behind those, not just, oh, this is the way we've always done it, and so we're going to keep on doing it that way, especially if it doesn't have, like, just like a fruitful outcome.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So you said fruitful outcome. I was thinking earlier. So we talk about spiritual goals, and to your point, they're often difficult to measure. The Bible does paint a picture of fruitful outcome, the fruit of the Spirit, right? Which love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Mm-hmm. That's right. I have them all memorized. I memorized them because I don't have them all inside of me.
It's just a checklist of what you need to work on.
You have them memorized in the same order that I have them memorized. Aaron swaps two of them, and I'm always oh, you missed one.
Well, then that's just the way it's written.
Oh,
so
my bad.
You swap two of them, and it always messes me up.
So my point is, though, like, that is you can look at your life and say, you often don't know, am I patient enough? Until you get in a situation and your 15-year-old, almost 16-year-old daughter tells you, hey, that didn't seem all that patient. And you're like, oh, okay, so I don't have that down.
Right.
But those are to a degree, like, I mean, you mentioned engineering, and those are to a degree what we would call like lag measures, things that you measure after the fact. But when it comes to goal setting, you can also have, I think, 4 Disciplines of Execution, 4DX, a book, it talks about the importance of lead measures. So, I mean, I've seen, like, when it comes to spiritually, like, I can't guarantee my outcomes, but there are probably some things that if I get these lead measures right, if I get these inputs right, it's going to create a greater opportunity for me to move in the direction that I want to on the other side. Yeah. Let's talk about those from it. So, like, I know we didn't talk about this before, but what would you say, like, what are some good lead measures? What are some things to do on the front side to make sure we're moving in the right direction towards our spiritual goals?
I'll just use this as an example because you brought it up earlier of saying, like, oh, I have a goal that I want to be in my Bible X amount of times a week or whatever like that, right? So we just recently talked about this. We were on vacation. It's when we went to LA, went to the Dodgers game, stuff like that. We're off, on vacation for 3 weeks. And we were having this conversation about how, always pack my Bible, always ready to go, whenever we're out on vacation, of like, yeah, I'm going to spend all this time with the Lord and all this sort of thing, or whatever. And that just wasn't the case. I'm sleeping in, spending time at the pool, all sorts of stuff, not being my best devotional self. But there was a situation that I'm not going to go into detail in it, but there was a guy that we saw on the side of the road, and there was a particular passage of scripture that came to mind for me that didn't leave me alone. And I knew that because of that, I had to step in and help this person out. And so what we realized was, man, I didn't hit the mark as far as spending time in my Bible this week. But when I got pressed, the thing that came out of me was the result of all the time I had spent prior. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think there are certain things that you do where, I know you, I mean, you're a fit guy, right? If any situation ever arises where you or your family is in danger, like, I don't think you train with that scenario in mind. But, like, if somebody rolls up on you in the street, you're not like, hey, let me get a quick pump real quick. Right. Right? It's all the muscle that you've been working to build is now being put into action in this moment. Right. And that's the way I think a lot of these things work.
I was just thinking about setting yourself up for success when you're setting your goals. Being the engineer kind of type A person, I want to set these really elaborate goals that are honestly unrealistic. You laugh.
Is that why roads take so much longer to build than people think they're going to? Is that what it is?
It's all my fault.
Okay, that's good.
She's like, on paper, this goal is going to take 6 months, but in reality,
the hope in real life is that it will take.
So I want like my Bible time to have like in 6 months, I want to know what somebody who's like got their doctorate in theology knows. And it's like, okay, well, spending 5 minutes in the Bible app every morning, you're not going to get there in 6 months. So setting realistic goals is that's preaching to me. And consistency. Just like that, knowing what you're capable of when you're setting those goals. Not that they're easy, like don't set goals. I don't know. I'm somebody who will add something to a list that I've already done just so I can check it off. Yeah. So I feel that sense of accomplishment. So set your goals a little bit further than where you are now, but not so far that you just constantly feel defeated every time you're missing the mark.
Hope in Real Life family, I want to take a moment and let you know about a resource that we have for you for your own personal development, spiritual enrichment, and really a way for you to find a bit more hope in real life. We have a tool for you called the Hope in Real Life app. It offers things like parenting tips, financial resources, marriage insights. If you're looking for it, there's even Bible reading plans in there. And there's a community where you can even share prayer requests and know that someone is praying for you for whatever it is that you have going on in your life. It's available right now in the Apple App Store or in Google Play. You can search Hope in Real Life in both stores, or you can use the download link that is in the show notes. Remember, tomorrow can be better than today, and hope is possible even in real life. What are some of the goals that the two of you have?
You want to go first?
I can.
I need to think of mine.
Yeah, I can. So for me, physical fitness is one of those things that I have on the list that I'm not doing great at. So I just recently turned 30, and I told myself I want to be healthier on my 30th birthday than I was at any other point. The all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue place we went to on my 30th birthday would probably disagree. I was I was literally sitting there eating all you can eat Korean barbecue on my 30th birthday. And I'm like, you know what? I think I messed this one up. I don't think I did it right. But yeah, so that's one. And a big part of that, even more so than any sort of physical goal that I have for myself, what I want my body to look like, any of that sort of stuff. The mindset behind that is I never want our future child to know their dad unhealthy as much as he can do something about it, right? God forbid if there's any disease that afflicts me or anything like that, you know, whatever. But as much as I have control over it, I want that to be a thing. Another one is, we just finished watching a video the other day that, you know, talked about this guy was saying something along the lines of, I'm going to butcher it, but he was like, don't wake your kids up angry in the morning and expect them to have a good day.
Yeah.
You know? And so I want to be the type of person that, even when that reaction does come out, I'm mindful of them. You know what I mean? I don't want to be so out of touch or out of control of my emotion, that I act and then don't review it. So something that I try to make a natural habit of mine is actually thinking back over the course of the day and looking at how I responded to certain situations, and they'll bug me, man. They really do. But I think that's a good thing. I think that's supposed to be a part of that process of, there are certain things in your life, none of us are perfect, that when you look back on your day, it should bug you about the way that you naturally responded. But then do you just apathetically say, well, that was Tuesday, maybe Wednesday will be better, or do I actually go back and make amends? Do I apologize for the spaces where I messed up? Am I taking those things to the Lord in prayer? Am I actually stopping to say, hey, God, what was that about? Like, what's going on inside of my heart, and actually trying to assess some of those things? So I would say those are two simple ones. One of the other ones that I would throw out there, you know, we recently sat down and we wrote out our family values. What are the things that we want to say are important to us? And one of the things that we wrote down was we don't celebrate sin. And the idea of that is I think part of where that comes from is I just think about, you know, raunchy reality show on Netflix that I just can't get enough of. There's a cliffhanger on the drama, and I want to see how this fight blows up in the next episode. Or I want to see, oh, this person cheated on this person. How are they going to respond when they find out? Like, there's a part of me internally that gets excited and drawn into that, and I hate it. Yeah. Like, in hindsight, like, I can enjoy.
Like after you watched the Wolverine Deadpool movie?
Exactly like when I watched the Wolverine and Deadpool movie. It's like, why did I find that so funny? You know what I mean? Not saying like, oh, I got to be boring and I can't enjoy anything and I got to, wag a finger at anything that doesn't look whatever. But it's like, okay, but why am I more fulfilled by that than being a loving husband? Yeah. Or why am I more fulfilled by that than the time that I spend with God every day? Why do I run to these things that I hope will numb me or pacify me long enough, as opposed to things that actually do give me life and that give life to others around me? So trying to be mindful of those things too has been super helpful for me.
I'm just going to start out with one that I have failed at. I had set a goal. So we found out that I was pregnant on New Year's Eve of 2023. And so
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Everyone's like, is this flying by for you? And I was like, is 2024 flying by for you? Because that is essentially like, the time that we've been dealing with. But on that day, I set a goal for myself that I wanted to have read through the whole Bible by September 12th, which is our due date. I am nowhere on track. I think I'm back in Exodus, so there's no way I'm going to make it through.
Depends on, never say never, but.
I do not have.
If you were reading backwards chronologically,
there you go.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. You're almost there. Just keep it up.
But I set this goal of like, I want to read the Bible by the time the baby gets here. And I don't know if it came from like the healthiest place. I mean, you mentioned a little bit of like this idea of arriving. Mm-hmm. Do we ever really arrive at these goals? Like spiritual goals are tough because there's always room for, in other goals too, there's always room for improvement. But I felt like September 12th is the deadline. I have to know everything, like the Bible in and out, so I can explain to my 1-day-old child
the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah, like the foundations of our faith, because on day one, they're going to look at me and ask,
start deconstructing.
They need you to teach them how to use a real potty before they, just so you know, that comes first. So you got time.
Yes. So my mind has now shifted a lot to sleeping and eating and all the things to sustain life, let's try to keep them alive for a year so then I can teach them the foundations of their faith. So that was just a really unrealistic goal. And then I let the just the excuses and, I just tell it's fine. But there's still like value in that. I can still pick my Bible up and read scripture, not with like the deadline of September 12th. I have to be done with the whole Bible. Mm-hmm. But I just was like, I'm not going to meet that goal. So I'm just not going to do it at all. Yeah. And that's where we are now. Mm-hmm. I just gave up and stopped reading chronologically through the Bible. And then another goal I have, I guess like you were talking about just your response in like situations. I am trying to be more patient and mindful with our dog. That she's been good practice. I know having a child is going to be way different than having a dog, but there are definitely moments where she does not bring out the best in me. I can get really impatient, and it's because
Can I share one story really quick? This is okay. It's when we were back in the apartment. You know exactly which one I'm talking about, probably.
Is this the one from the porch?
No, it wasn't about a porch. Okay. We were in our apartment. I'm trying to think of how vegans close your ears. But we were. I was sleeping one day, and she was a puppy.
Lovers?
That too.
Yeah.
She was a puppy, a few weeks old, and I woke up out of my sleep to Morgan shouting, "I can fit both of my hands around your neck." And I'm like, hey, you might want to work on that a little bit.
Yeah, you can't do that with kids.
No.
You can't do that.
No.
It's like the first course is don't shake a baby.
Let's go back to goal setting.
But she's come a long way since then. She was like, that wasn't a bright spot. It wasn't good, but we turned things around and course corrected.
It's this it stems from this like need or like desire for control. And so Ayren and I are actually in a married small group. But recently, I think the last study we did, we split off. Guys did one study, girls did another study. And we were walking through the cost of control, which I can give you a link to drop in the show notes if you want
that sounds great.
It was amazing because it talks about like the different areas of your life that you're trying to control. And with our dog specifically, it's just like I'm trying to control for the sake of my convenience. You know, you're really inconveniencing me right now by barking and whining or whatever she's doing. I just want you to be a well-behaved dog that sits next to me and I can pet you when I want to. And then just like knowing her needs as well. Like I'm definitely sometimes put my own needs before hers. Like I want to sleep for 30 more minutes, but it's 9:00 and that's her breakfast time. So just using that as a reminder, like a child's not going to let you sleep for 30 more minutes. Like when they're ready to eat, they're ready to eat. So yeah, just that desire for control and patience.
Yeah. I think for me, my overarching spiritual goal is I try to keep things as simple as I can, but to be more like Jesus today than I was yesterday.
Yep.
Like that's just, that's kind of, if I can hit that, and I appreciate you saying earlier, let me start with one I failed in, because I don't get it right every day. But then that takes me down to like, okay, what things are going to help me do that? And for me personally, it comes down to like, be mindful of what I put in my body, be mindful of what I put in my mind. And so that's physically and spiritually, right? And I joke around with people sometimes, like, so how do you decide what to eat? Just ask yourself, would Batman eat it? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to be thinking like what we put in our bodies physically has just as much or more impact on, our bodies than even going to the gym and working out. And so, I have to battle like, Batman would not eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch the way I want to eat Cinnamon Toast Crunch. He just wouldn't do it.
It's a lot of growling involved, I'm sure, if he doesn't. Yeah.
Can we get bracelets?
I need the milk. Give me the milk, Jeffrey.
We have WWJD bracelets, but like, what would Batman?
What would Batman do?
WWE?
So like, you got to be mindful of it, right? Physically, it's the same thing spiritually. Like, what am I going to expose myself to?
Yeah.
Because it has a huge impact. And for me, Ivy was talking to someone the other day, just even about sermon writing. It is more important for me to make sure that I'm taking care of my own quiet time with the Lord if I'm preparing for a sermon than it is to actually sit down and try to write a sermon.
Yeah.
Because it's the things that are going to come out when you're not thinking about it, when you're not trying to force it because of that actual time. So it's what is it that I make sure I say yes to, and then what is it that I sure as heck make sure I say no to, because that's what's going to help me become more like Jesus today than I was yesterday.
Yeah, that's good. I heard somebody describe following Jesus recently as stumbling forward.
Yeah.
Like you fall, but when you get up, you're like, oh, I'm closer to him than I was when I was back there. You know what I mean?
Hope in Real Life family, I want to pause for a moment and let you know about an opportunity that I believe can help you find a bit more hope in everyday life. Listen, I know a lot of our viewers probably aren't a part of a church, or maybe you gave up on the church a long time ago. And believe me, possibly for good reason. I understand. But I don't want you to miss out on the hope that you can actually experience by journeying alongside of a group of people that really are seeking God's best for their lives. If you are the least bit curious, we try to make this as simple for you as we possibly can. Wherever it is that you digest digital content, podcasts, you can go to the podcast store. You can check it out on YouTube and just search Hope Community Church. You'll be able to find our messages there and check those out. Or if you actually want to tune in during a service time, you can go to gethope.tv at 4:15 or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you can tune in at 9:30 or 11:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that's at gethope.tv. We hope that you'll take a chance with us and experience what it is God has for you in your life. You're going to find practical messages that will help you find hope in the everyday moments of your life. Hope you'll check it out. How can our listeners start today to make meaningful progress in their walk with Jesus?
Yeah. I'll start here. I think the first thing is you have to take inventory. I really think that's something that's really important. It's the same thing. Again, I keep using this as an analogy, and Scripture uses it as an analogy for a reason. But when you go in, if you have a physical goal, you go into a gym one day, you sit down with a personal trainer. That's the first thing I'm going to ask you is what's your goal? Do you want to lose fat? Do you want to add muscle? Do you want to, whatever? Do you want to get your eating? And, they start to look at all those things. And I think that place of inventory is the lack thereof is the thing that gets us in the most trouble.
Yeah.
It's just the result of, this is who I am. This is who I'll always be. Too late. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's just it, right? I think to take an inventory of this is who I am. This is how I got here. This is who Christ says I should be. Where are the gaps? Where are the deficiencies? Where are the areas where I'm missing it? This is way out of left field, and I'm not going to go into detail about it, but there's a podcast that I listened to recently called the Radical Empathy Podcast, and this guy does a fantastic job
I feel you
of meeting. He talks to people who are on the fringes of society, and he's like, listen, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to, I just want to hear, how did you get to where you are? His first episode was with a flat earther, actually. And I went in, I'm like, I gotta hear this. This is gonna be good, right? And by the end of it, I'm like, you know what? She's not that great. But so
by the end, I was like, maybe we haven't been to the moon.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. That might be an exact text that I sent to Morgan. but what I love about it is there was one guy that he was talking to, and I won't go into detail about it because out of context, you're gonna judge. I know that for a fact. But he went to jail for a crime that he committed. And he was going to serve a sentence of 4 years. And they told him, listen, you're going to be in jail for 4 years. The last 6 months, so after 3.5 years, we're going to put you together with a psychiatrist before we send you back into society. And he goes, why are you waiting that long? He's like, can we actually start now? Because I don't know why I'm in here in the first place. I don't see how what I did was wrong. And so for him, he had to go through this entire process of learning that what he did, why it was illegal, why it was not okay to do, why it was inappropriate behavior. And it really caused me to look at myself and realize, like, there are things now, after X amount of years of following Jesus, that, like, I look back at my old life or when I was younger and think, man, I was okay with that then and I'm not now. And there's something that's happened in the middle of that process, right? Which I'm grateful for, that God, by his grace, has gotten me to this place. But now I wonder, man, when I'm 40, when I'm 50, what type of things I'm going to look back on in my 30s that I'm like, why did I ever think that was okay? You know? So scripture talks about the renewing of the mind, and that's exactly what it is, that there's a certain type of life that seems right in and of itself. Yeah, I'm great. Why do I need any correcting? Why do I need to work on myself? Why do I need to improve anything? There's a way that seems right, but then in light of how God has wired us and designed each and every one of us to live, we start to realize, man, there's some work that needs to get done, and it can be very overwhelming if I feel like I have to do it all on my own. Yeah. And so instead, it's just a daily, to your point, saying, all right, what you got in store for tomorrow? Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Morgan, anything that our listeners can start today to help them build a more meaningful relationship with Jesus?
I think in this particular aspect of like setting spiritual goals, and Ayren, you like led me right into it, of that like assessing of where you are right now. I think there's also an importance of bringing in other people and community and having somebody else say, like, point things out, because we're blind to some parts of us that we could be just really failing in, and maybe not even willing to admit. Maybe we know we're failing in that, but I would never set a spiritual goal in that area because I know I'm never going to meet it. I don't want to deal with that ickiness. So I don't know if we like talked a lot about the discipline and like the accountability that goes into setting spiritual goals, but I think there's an importance of having like a physical person that can get in your face and say, hey, you set this goal, and you're like, somebody's going to hold you to it. Like having somebody who's committed to holding you accountable. I think in a marriage context, you have some of that, but then there's also just that level of grace too, that we're willing to give each other. So there are goals that I've had where I don't even know if I've had the humility to ask Ayren for accountability for like keeping those goals. But yeah, sometimes there's just a struggle of like holding your spouse accountable. So, you know, finding someone outside of your marriage, if you are married, or finding a friend, a mentor. People who are older than us are great at holding us accountable, because like you were saying, you know, what am I going to see when I'm 50 that I was doing when I was 30? Well, let's find a 50-year-old who has walked with Jesus and can say, hey, like, I was doing that when I was 30, and I learned from that, and I don't want you to fall into that same trap. Yeah. So I would say find accountability in that goal setting.
That's great. Clearly, plenty more we could talk about. We're going to wrap this one up. Probably going to end up needing to do a follow-up on this at some point. Ayren Morgan, greatly appreciate you being
thanks for having
on the show this time. So absolutely. Fun. Hey, listen, to our listeners, if this has been beneficial to you, and you know someone else in your life that would benefit from this idea of setting spiritual goals, hey, it's like, I love how you said at the beginning, Morgan, it's not about going from zero to having a doctorate in ministry, in theology or in ministry right out of the gate. It's about how do we stumble forward? How do we make sure that at the end of the day we're making progress? If you know there's somebody that would benefit with that, please share this with them. You never know the difference that you can make when you're sharing a bit of hope in the everyday moments of other people's lives. Thank you again for being on the show. For listeners, we will see you next time. Let's keep sharing hope. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hope in Real Life podcast. If this content was valuable for you, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You never know how important it could be to bring a little hope into someone else's life. There's even a place here for you to comment. We would love to hear from you and hear your feedback. Until next time, let's keep sharing hope.